Us podcast.
Chaos and comedy, where we explore life on the spectrum.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Jennifer.
In each episode, we dive deep into life surrounding the neurodivergent, exploring life, complex and often comical dynamics between society, family, education, and more.
Through building understanding, we hope to build a community. So like and subscribe for more chaos and comedy as we explore life behind the scenes of neurodiversity.
All right. Well, we'd like to talk to you today about the beginning of our experience in this. And Jennifer has a lot more experience than I do, so I'm going to ask her a few questions because I just want to, so everyone can see where the base. Because I think we're all, if you have a child who's dealing with these issues, listen to someone else's journey can help you with your own. So, Jen, if you wouldn't mind, just how does that look? Like, was it with your first son? Was it a teacher who said something to you? Was it something you noticed yourself? I mean, just talk a little bit about how the journey began.
Well, he was little, so yeah, it was always me. I knew from the time he was little. I didn't know what it was, but I just knew something was different. Because I'd done a lot of nannying and taking care of kids since I was 12, and I was like, man, this is a lot. But it just started out with him having accommodations in school, and when he was 9 was when somehow I learned, and I don't remember how, that I should get him a evaluation. And then I went to the doctor, and the doctor recommended a neuropsych eval. So we went to a psychiatrist, a child psychiatrist, and he did the evaluation and scared me. Like, said he's got ADHD, he's got oppositional defiant disorder, and if you don't do something now, he's gonna end up with social conduct disorder. I'm like, what are all these terms? What are you talking about? Like, what is all this? And then they said, oh, it's social conduct disorder is, the clinical term for basically like juvenile delinquent. He's going to end up in trouble with the law. He's going to end up, going to jail, that kind of stuff.
Well,
as criminality.
As a mom, a young mom, and you have
a 9-year-old, and they're telling you he's going to be he's going to be in the juvenile justice system. They can see that at 9. Well,
can you talk about when they first told you needed to take him to go get a psych eval?
Well, I needed it for school because school was being disagreeable when it came to giving him accommodations, because back then, I mean, he's, in his early 30s now. So back then, he's smart. He's got a high IQ, and so when they test him for academics, he doesn't have any learning disabilities. He doesn't have any academic deficiencies. So his only disability was behavior. And they were like, well, we don't accommodate for behaviors. And I didn't know any different. And I don't know what they did back then, versus what they know now. But back then, it was kind of like, well, what do you want us to do? We can put him in the behavior school, in the behavior class, but then he's going to be around kids who do way worse things, and then he's going to learn how to do way worse things. So don't you want him to be with kids who set better examples? And so I was like, well, yeah. So I was told if I got him a psych eval, then that would give like credence, and it would give validation to his accommodations and, all that, which didn't necessarily happen, but
do you remember what kind of behaviors he was exhibiting at that time that made them actually approach you?
They didn't approach me. I approached them. I was always the one going after them, always the one saying, we need more help. He needs more help, because, it's not acceptable for my 3rd grader to be sitting outside in the hall, because the teacher has 5 ADHD kids in her class, and mine's the only medicated one. And so he's the only one that she could send outside, and then he would just sit there, in the hall, missing instruction. And, while the other kids are climbing the ceilings in there, and one of the kids' moms was in the class like all day to try to help with her kid. And the school wasn't giving like an extra person in the class, no paraeducator, this teacher was at the end of her career, should have retired probably 5 years previous, but she had shared that she had an autistic grandson that she was raising. It was only like 2 or 3, and so she wasn't going to be retiring anytime soon. And I'm just thinking as a mom, like, oh my gosh, this lady is at the end of her career. She's a grandma. Now she's dealing with an autistic 2 or 3-year-old. Her nerves are shot, and now she's got 5 ADHD kids in her class. Like, I know how it was to deal with just Thomas, like as a mom. So I'm thinking, this is insanity. And then I called an IEP meeting, and when they, denied that there was any problem, that's when somebody had said to me, like, well, if you get a neuropsych eval, that'll give more, like, weight. It'll give more depth and teeth to what you're trying to go for, which didn't work with the school district, but whatever. At the time, it was, this is what parents go through, though. Like, if their kid has a behavior disorder, it gets minimized from the school. And, here I am at my expense, my insurance expense, taking him. I don't know what I'm doing. They have all the answers. They know, because they're dealing with these kids, and I kept saying that, like, this is my first rodeo. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what is a neuropsych eval. What kind of psychiatrist do I need to go to? What's going to help get him the support that he needs at school so he's not sitting in the hallway? Because, like, he was such a bright, charismatic, funny, social, hilarious kid, really smart, and, had horrible academic self-esteem because, by 3rd grade. And I'm like, these two things shouldn't go together, but it's because his behavior, he doesn't sit there nicely, quietly, like a little girl, typically does in class. And, in my mind, it was so illogical, but, I understood because, I'm a product of the public school system, I understand we're supposed to sit, we're supposed to listen, we're supposed to, not interrupt. And by 3rd grade, you're not learning to read, you're reading to learn, and so they should really be able to get into subjects at this point. And we're still dealing with, can we get him to, like, stop interrupting, stop blurting out, he's socializing with everybody, he's disrupting class, he's, impulse control is not even a thing. And, he's coming home and he's hating school, but he loves his friends.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is like the saddest thing I've ever seen. And, oh my God, getting in trouble on the bus, because for him now I know, and I could tell at the time, like, the more excitable the atmosphere got, the louder, the, more input he was getting from the atmosphere, then the more he would get, so it would amp him up. On a bus, it's like the loudest, it's the
right,
most
that affirmation of being
and so then he can be like class clown, life of the party, loved to be life of the party, and so then he'd do something, get himself in trouble, or he'd mouth off, or he'd say something to the bus driver. He getting, like, kicked off the bus, suspended from the bus. I'm like, I can't even keep a job right now, like, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I can't keep a job, not because I don't work well, but because it's like every week I'm getting a phone call about something. I'm having to deal with his behavior somehow because they can't manage him at school. And I'm just like, okay, and so I was like, okay, I'll get this neuropsych eval, that should help.
That's important because I think that most people think that in order to get your child some of these things, you have to have money. This is not a place that you came from. You were in the middle
my
of
God,
it
we
and
were
trying
so
to be
poor.
a working parent.
Yeah, we're two household working parents. I wasn't getting any child support. They had state medical insurance. So yeah, we've got all the barriers going on, and we're not making like I didn't have like some high profile job that paid really well. I'm like, I don't know, probably making like $11-12 an hour. And we're just trying to like pay our bills, and I can't. And I got like 1 week of vacation a year, 1 week of sick time a year. I'm blowing through that. I'm getting disciplined at work for my absenteeism, for my, whatever, because my husband can't take time off because he was 100% commission. He made most of the money for the family. So if he took time off, it's hundreds of dollars a day, for every day that he misses. And then, we can't afford for him to lose his job. Not that we could afford for me to lose my job, but if we're going to lose one, or if we're going to, have an issue, it's going to be me, not him. And here we are, so now I'm trying to find a neuropsych eval at a, private psychiatrist that takes state insurance.
Well, you said, and I think it's, I would love for you to pull on that thread a little bit, is that you saw something with him and you were tired of him being in the hallway and him not doing anything.
It's exhausting.
You called the meeting. Did you even, at that time, did you even know what an IEP was?
Oh, yeah. No, I was well versed in that because it started at preschool, and he went to kindergarten, did so great. They exited him from his IEP, and I was too naive to understand that when we exit from the IEP, that means we have to requalify to get a new IEP. And so this was trying to requalify, because what happened was he had a great teacher, first and second grade. She rolled up from first to second grade with the class. And so first and second grade, even though I didn't realize at the time, because, they present it like, this is so great. They've, met all their goals. We see no more need for the IEP, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, this is a good thing. And what that means is it's going to be harder to get back to the IEP. So, it is a good thing if they really don't need it, right? But that was really early. That was really premature to make that determination. So what I should have said at the end of kindergarten was, that's nice. Let's get into first grade. Let's see how he does, through first grade. And we can have this discussion again next year at the next annual IEP meeting. But I am not going to agree to exiting him from his IEP. What I want you to do is put in more progressive goals, and we'll see how he deals with that next year. So he's not on an IEP first and second grade because he has this amazing teacher who just naturally accommodates, naturally takes care of things.
And when you say roll up, that means she was the same teacher from first to second grade?
Yeah, and the whole class rolled up together. It was just a cohesive roll. And
is that not something that's typical? Or
no, I mean, it sometimes happens in a school, like they want to move a teacher to a different grade, and then they kind of, to like soften the blow or maybe get the teacher to buy in, and in this case, that's what she said. She said, all right, I'll teach second grade, but I'm taking this class with me, so they were like, okay. So they rolled her up to second grade. She took the class with her. And then, so it was amazing, really, truly amazing first and second grade. Get to third grade, and we have this tired, stressed out, overworked, unsupported teacher. And, that's when we see the result of not having an IEP, right? So now I've got to try to get them requalified. They're telling me they don't see a problem. They're lying. They're, threatening probably behind the scenes the teacher with, whatever, because this principal was just evil, nasty woman. And she You could tell like that the whole room was like under some direction that I was not privy to pretend like there wasn't a problem. And I was like, okay.
But he was still not in the classroom on a consistent basis.
Right.
But nothing was wrong.
Right.
So we get
and then
IEP.
and then what they did was they made it so like it's a failing on the teacher's part. And I'm like livid for her because I'm just like, that's some bullshit. Like it's her fault now? You guys put 5 ADHD kids in her classroom. She's like 65. She's got a 2-3-year-old autistic grandson at home. And she's failing? What in whose world? Like this is unreasonable. But I don't know enough. I'm not confident enough. I mean, that's all the things I'm thinking, but I'm in the moment. I'm just having all these thoughts and I'm not saying them out loud. I'm just trying to make sense of the fact that here I've gotten all this feedback from his first and second grade teacher for 2 years that he was, a lot, but she does all these things and she would work with me. I've gotten, the current teacher's feedback. How do you think I know that she's got a 2-3-year-old
Right.
autistic? Because we're talking about how hard her class is for her. And, I'm not trying to put her on the defense while my son's in the hallway. I'm trying to problem solve. How do we get him back in the classroom,
Right.
And I'm looking at it going, this is an impossible situation for her.
Because this is also, and let's just take a moment to talk about, this wasn't him and being in the hallway for a little bit of time, then coming back and re-engaging with the class. He would come in, there would be some kind of outburst or whatever, and he'd just be in the hallway pretty much for the rest of the day.
I don't know. At the time, I never even thought to ask that question. How long is he in the hallway? To him, it seemed like forever. That's all I know.
Well, in my experience as a...
And they weren't timing it because he didn't have a one-on-one. He didn't have a, you know what I mean? So who really knows, right? Like now I know all the questions I would ask.
Right.
And now they probably wouldn't do that to me because I come in, fully equipped with anything. But I was the normal first-time parent because here's the thing. I'm on kid 5 now, right? And this is what I do for a living. And I've been doing it for 30 years. And I've worked in the public school system. I've worked for private schools like this. I've done behavior professionally. I have several kids like this with different things. So I've experienced different situations. But most parents have 1 or 2 kids like this, right? Most parents don't get to most parents don't get to keep experiencing this and figure it out. So you are always coming in with deer in the headlights, going, what? I don't know. Don't you guys deal with like hundreds of students like this over your career? I'm new to this. Can you guide me? Well, it's against their best interest to guide us because guiding us towards more supports equals $. So, it's a conflict of interest.
Right.
And they got to stay in their budgets and they got to, which is valid. I understand, it's not like money's like free flowing in the districts. It's not like they have all the money to spend, but also not your problem because this is your child, right? So they have to figure it out. They have access to, lots of different kinds of funding and stuff, but there's gaps in what they can access depending on certain things, depending on certain supports and all kinds of things. So for us, we're trying to get him re-qualified for an IEP. And they're trying not to give it to me. And now that I look back, I go, they didn't want to give it to me because possibly that would have meant there was X amount of kids who needed an IEP in that class, which then would have required a para in that class. That's money.
They would have had to hire someone to come in.
And that would have affected the principal's budget, which is why she was so nasty, because the principal is getting graded on her job, on her budget, her ability to keep her school in budget. And so, and this is all just obviously me guessing, but this happens all the time. So it's pretty likely that that's what she was dealing with, that's what the teacher was dealing with, and that's why my son ended up being denied an IEP and me having to go through a whole rigmarole of things again. Go get a neuropsych eval this time. Let's do this. Let's do that. So we have to they have to fail. And I remember being so furious because I was like, so my child has to get to the place where they are just miserably failing life before you're going to give him an IEP. And then, that means I have to let him do horribly. And that sounds terrible to me. Yeah. That sounds like, why would we do that to a child, who's in their formative years of academic self-esteem, who's in their formative years of learning. He's going to miss all this learning while we're waiting for him to fail. So, I had to play the game, and I was super angry about it.
So, thank you. I think you really opened up something because you said that he got denied the IEP. Mm-hmm. So, in order to get him an IEP, even to be able to meet with the district and the teacher, you had to pay for
another one, because it was okay, so I asked for the IEP meeting, thought that we were all going to come together. It was going to be easy like the first time. And, we were just all going to come together, problem solve, make an IEP, and move on. And I had no idea that I was going to be met with all this opposition. So that took me by surprise. So I wasn't prepared. And then they denied it. So then I was like, okay, what do I need to do to get this? So then that's when I got the neuropsych eval. Found out he has to fail, all this stuff. So I started learning everything I could about the process and how we get him on an IEP.
So I have to ask you, and because of the era in which this is taking place, what was that like to gather the information? Because now I could go on my phone and pull up all kind of resources and information.
Yeah, I'm at Barnes and Noble getting giant books. They're like this tall, this wide. They're like this thick, and, they're like huge books on it, right? And they got I'm a good reader, and I'm fast. And so I'm just fire hosing information. And I'm trying to find out everything I can, anywhere I can. The internet it does exist, but this stuff's not on the internet, really. But at one of his doctor's appointments, somebody says, have you looked into Dr. Amen at University of Washington? Because we're in Seattle, right? And University of Washington has a big psych department where they do, they have a marriage and therapy, some couple is they do this big research, and so, world renowned at this point. And then there was this Dr. Amen who was, really the authority considered by everybody at the time on ADHD. He was doing groundbreaking research. He was getting, new answers. He was finding out information, and he was doing something that everybody was really taking notice of. And so they were like, you're in Seattle, you're right there, you should look into it. So I did, and found out that because it was research, I didn't know how to look into this stuff very well. What am I, 30? And I got 3 kids already, so I don't know what I'm doing. But what happened was I just remember calling, finding out that I was going to have to pay some amount of money out of pocket or try to get into it. Basically, the answer was I wasn't going to be able to participate in, or get my kid that kind of really cool help and answers, right? And I just remember going, man, he's in my backyard, and I can't get, the most current help for him and myself to find out what we're dealing with and what we're doing here. So I just started, like I got his book and I got other stuff, and I just read and read and read and read, because that's how you learned back then. And people weren't talking about, at that point, people were talking about ADHD like, well, kids are overdiagnosed with ADHD, and you probably give them too much sugar. You should probably, give them more cheese, give them more protein. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I understand that they're overdiagnosed. I'm not dealing with an overdiagnosed one. I promised you that.
Well, there's something to diet, but not to this extent of what people are talking about.
Yeah, just to put any rumors to rest, if they actually have ADHD, almost all the time, caffeine and sugar calm them down. So one of the hallmarks is give them a Coke. If they're not on medication, give them a Coke, and that's like a surefire way to see if you can get them to bring that down.
Well, when he got his neuropsych eval, is that when they said he needs to be medicated?
He was already medicated.
Okay.
We medicated him through his general practitioner when he was, our family practice doctor when he was 6 or 7. But the psychiatrist then could my understanding was the psychiatrist would drill down really good meds. I don't know about all that, but that's kind of when we went down the medication nightmare hole. So, but obviously a psychiatrist is more familiar with, and that is kind of their primary job,
Right.
To manage meds and make sure that the combination of meds and everything, which I didn't understand any of that either. To me, psychiatrist meant mental health. I didn't understand the difference between psychiatrist at the time. So I was like, oh, so your primary job is just kind of med checks. And this guy, looking back, it wasn't a horrible psych eval, but it wasn't a great one either. So we didn't get a really good one, a really thorough one on him until he was 15, almost 16. And that's when I found a really great guy who got us a good, thorough evaluation. But that was, I think, so when he was 9, it was like a pediatric psychiatric evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't understand that this was a psychiatric evaluation versus neuropsych. And neuropsych was done by a psychologist. Pediatric psychiatric evaluation was done by a psychiatrist. So we got him a real neuropsych eval when he was 15, 16. And oh boy, he hated it. He hated that guy so much. But he hated that guy so much because that guy did identify some real things that he was not wanting to accept or admit about, his own struggles and stuff like that. So, yeah, but what did we deal with? We dealt with, I think he didn't get back on an IEP until he was in 5th grade, because they strategically put him in a chaotic classroom in 4th grade, which was terrible for him, except that he loved being there because it was chaos. The teacher had ADHD.
So we went from 9 to 12
No, we went from 9 until 11. 2 school years. 3rd grade, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade. I think we got him back on maybe in 5th grade.
So that was your first experience. Can you talk about what your last experience was? Now move forward a few years. Economically, things have changed. Technology has changed. What was that experience like?
Yeah, so when we started to go down the road with Jack, I was like, okay. Now, first of all, Jack has learning disabilities, and so I knew that we were going to be able to get qualified on everything. Also, I know a lot more, so I know exactly what they can do. I know exactly what they should do. I know when they're doing things that they shouldn't do, saying things, whatever. So that made the IEP evaluation process, you know, a whole different experience. Also, when you come in and they know that you know all these things and that if you're new, get an advocate. Get someone who can advocate with you. Because that would be like something I do now, right? Like I can advocate now. It doesn't have to be someone who has any type of qualifications, because you can invite anybody you want to that IEP meeting.
I get that. I'm laughing because is it an advocate store? Like, do we go get our advocates from? Is there a line of advocates over there you can choose between these
that
sets?
One. Yeah, no.
So where does one get an advocate when you have a child and you're trying to get an IEP?
I mean, now we have the internet. So now you can go search online. You can probably find some people, there are educational counselors, there are educational advocates. Sometimes they come in the form of a lawyer. Sometimes they come in the form of someone like me who's in the system. Sometimes they come in the form of a parent, who just is, out there saying, hey, I can help you advocate. I take my experience and I'm going to come in, I'm going to help you, so that you have that person there. Do
you find those like in PTAs and then having those groups like that?
No.
Okay.
We're intentionally isolated, which is why we're doing this, right? Because we're trying to help de-isolate parents, because, by design, everyone is isolated from each other, because we want to keep, like I said, going back to most parents, they only have one or two kids, right? So by the time they get done with the process with their kid, mm-hmm. by the time they survive, if they survive the process with their kid, then they're gone and they're moving on. They don't, that was the biggest nightmare of their life. They don't want to go relive it. They don't want to go be a part of it again. So the district tries to exhaust them, and they can. I mean,
so
they can.
So you get your advocate, like you were saying.
Yeah, get an advocate.
And so you got Jack. You're mm-hmm. dealing with this.
Yeah, so I didn't need an advocate. But actually, even in my case, because it's my kid, I get more emotionally charged, and I might lose my words, or I might, forget important things. So I will have a SPED teacher come with me. And because of that, in the beginning, it helped keep me on track, right? But I have access to stuff like that. So, and I have access to, educational attorneys in the background that I can, just casually call and be like, hey, am I off base? What can I? What can't I? That kind of thing. But for a parent who doesn't have all that, if they can get an advocate, that's at least what would be helpful. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can find someone who just feels for you, and they've been down that road. It's hard to know if somebody in the school system that you're dealing with is giving you good advice or not. They might feel for you. They might also feel for you, but also be giving you advice to try to get you to not push back on the district. Mm-hmm. So you never really know. So you need somebody who's removed from the district.
Kind of neutral.
Yeah, to kind of help, set your expectations, because having realistic expectations as a parent is important too, because there is only so much that you can expect. Yes, of course, your child has a right to all the things and all the whatevers, but at the end of the day, we have to remember that we can't be unreasonable either. Like regular kids in the district, right? Typical kids in the district, they're not getting A+ care either. You know what I mean? Nobody's getting, exceptional education in the public school system. So let's be realistic about what we are asking to have done for our child, because we do need to take into consideration this is a group environment. Yes, you have the right to all of these things, but also if you can't be reasonable as a parent, then you're going to also have a problem like getting along with a district and being partners if that's possible.
Well, okay. So the IEP's coming on with your youngest. You have more knowledge. Does he get more services? This experience is better.
I mean, the process was faster. It was, I came in and I'm like, this is what I know I can ask for. This is what I think. But even then, they put him on an IEP, and then they tried to manipulate getting him off the things, getting him off the supports too soon. And then, I was like, hey, if you guys do what you want to do right here, he's going to fail. So he's doing great now because he has all those supports, but he's going to hit a wall if you take those away. We've been down this road. You don't want to do that. They, of course, decided to do what they wanted to do because it's a team decision. So you're only one member of the team, right? They come in with 10 people, and you come in with your 3. You're outnumbered on the team boat. So the team decides, this is what we're going to do. I'm like, okay, I want to be successful too. So I do everything I can to, support, hopefully, Jack being successful in what they wanted to do. Unfortunately, I was right, and what I thought would happen happened, but I didn't set him up to fail, which a lot of times parents got to admit to themselves that then they go home, they complain to their kids, around their kids hear it, they absorb it, and then they're not setting their kids up for success. So they got to measure their own reactions when they go home and what they talk about in front of their kids, because at the end of the day, if you want your kid to be successful, you're not always right. So you got to at least, try to do everything you can to see if whatever has been decided at the IEP meeting will work. You might know it's not going to, but try to be a part of the solution, not the problem.
Well, so did he have to get, did your youngest have to go through and get the same neuro?
Oh, yeah, I got him. He was second grade. I got him neuropsych eval. He'd have been in, if he hadn't been a COVID kid, he'd had a neuropsych eval in kindergarten. But we were in COVID, and we were completely shut down in Washington State, and no access to anything. And I didn't want to just assume because I'm in this field, because this is what my other kids had, that what we were seeing was any type of thing at all, because that's not my job. That's not what I do. Obviously have a lot of experience with it, but I can't diagnose. So I'm not trying to assume that he's got anything, because we're in COVID and we're home and the world is wrong right now. So we had to wait for him to get back into school to see what we were really looking at, get back to some semblance of normal. Got him back into school. He's in second grade. It was, within 3 months, we've got a problem. We held him back a year to see if it was just academic. Nope, we have a problem. So got him a neuropsych eval in second grade, because I just went straight for it. I had much different situation.
Right.
I have regular insurance. I have more money. I am a single mom, but I've been doing this for a while. And so I know, I'm calling for appointments for neuropsychs. I also worked with people who got neuropsych evals and stuff. I worked in schools where we dealt with neuropsych evals. So I know who my choices are, who the good ones, where are the go-tos, but the problem is the good ones are scheduled a year, 18 months out.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to balance. I need a diagnosis in the next month or two with, let me get one of the best. So I found somebody.
And they say that. They said the person you want, if they're available,
12 to 18 months, Yeah. Hey, everybody, just deal with what you're dealing with right now for the next 18 months, and then we can get you in. It's The struggle's real for a good neuropsych eval. And also,
Did you stop there, or did you?
the good ones usually don't take insurance. So you got to pay cash. And then you can go submit it to your insurance.
Wow. Did you do Amen with Jack?
Not the first time around. I didn't even look into it. You know, I just remembered the way it was. It was, he got his first one, and I really felt like he was probably on the spectrum a little bit. But she was like, it's kind of borderline. You know, I want to like
The psych eval was.
Yeah, she was like, maybe, maybe not. Let's treat the anxiety and the ADHD before we make a determination about the autism, which I felt was fair.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're dealing with, you know, multiple diagnoses. Let's hit out the ones that we can, you know, easily before we get to ones that might be affected, what the determination is. So, she said, you know, we'll reevaluate in another year. And then, you know, a year came and went, and we were having school refusal, and we were having all kinds of things. And I thought, oh, yeah, it's time to do another eval. And then I was like, wait a minute. You know what? I'm going to find that Dr. Amen again. What's that sound? Oh. And then I looked it up, and I saw he's got clinics all over, and I was like, wait, what? You know, I didn't even know if he'd still be practicing or if he was still at UW or whatever. Oh, no. I mean, he's got clinics now. And so I'm like, bet. I'm on it. You know, let's check this out and see what they do. So I call him up, and, you know, I mean, going in and getting a evaluation with them is the same as going and getting a neuropsych eval that I have to pay cash out for anyway, because, you know, if I want to go to a good one. So I may as well go here. And they do brain scans, and they do, you know, it's like 2 days, not full days, but you go over a period of like a couple days, and, you know, they do different tests and lots of different brain tests. It's very scientific, looking at the brain. And it's not so much, I mean, there's a lot of history, all kinds of stuff, but he doesn't sit in a room with somebody and them talk to him about how he does what he does or anything like that too much. It's just mostly like all this data that they get from all this other stuff. And then they sit down with you and they go over all these different brain scans, what the different areas of the brain are, what it means. You know, you go with a psychiatrist, but their psychiatrists are more like not just med managers. They're really like way more into the neuroscience of it. And they also don't recommend like meds first as a first line of defense. They go for supplements and natural remedies and whatever we can do naturally, you know, with supplements. And he's got his own line, but there's, you know, there's typical ingredients and stuff that, you know, they're finding are beneficial. You know, there's deficits that they may have in their diet, in their gut, in their everything, you know, and so mind blowing, you know, because it was like without us telling them, they told us everything that we were dealing with him, but we also got why, not just well, we kind of think, and this is what we kind of know about this condition, and so we kind of think this medication might help him, but if not, then we'll try more.
Right.
It was more like, okay, we have definite answers. Here is what his diagnosis is. Here's why, blah, blah, blah. So it was amazing.
Amazing experience. You take that information back to the school districts, or what's the next step after that?
Yeah, and then, you know, I brought that. That was his psych.
So he was diagnosed at that point?
Then he got the autism, anxiety, ADHD. Yeah, so we found out at that he's got autism level 1, and he has really high ADHD and off the charts anxiety, like beyond what people typically typically treat anxiety, which all makes sense now because like he's a PDA kid, which is that pathological demand avoidance, and so that's a profile of ADHD that is not recognized in the DSM.
DSM?
Currently, that's our big book in the United States of all the psychiatric diagnosis. So it's not technically recognized in the United States, but it is recognized in Europe. We're hoping it'll come out in the DSM-5.
That was previously occupation. What did you say?
Oppositional defiant disorder.
Yes.
Well, it's not previously. It's just that oppositional defiant disorder gets mistaken for PDA a lot.
All right. So I gotta ask, post and pre, as a parent, because we get a lot of parents who don't really have an interest in getting their kids diagnosed. So the benefits of having the information as opposed to not having information, because you've experienced both sides,
is everything. Parents who don't get their kids diagnosed these days, it's almost irresponsible, because it not just irresponsible. You could even, in some cases, you could see it as neglectful, because you're looking at, especially with kids on the spectrum, let's say, you're looking at early interventions. If we get early diagnosis, that can be life-changing for them. And it's not about, teaching them to mask. I'm not saying, that way they can learn how to mask better. What I'm saying is that way they understand why they do what they do. You understand why they do what they do. The school understands why they do what they do because you've identified what is going on when they do ABC. And if you can understand or okay, when when this kid puts his hand down his pants in public, he's not a typical kid putting his hands down his pants in public. He is on the spectrum. Then you can actually teach him, the right way on not to do that and why we don't do that. Because how we're going to speak to a kid on the spectrum about that versus a kid not on the spectrum about that same thing is very different.
Yeah.
The kid on the spectrum is doing it like if you had an itch and you're scratching it. So they don't understand any of the social implications. They don't understand all this stuff. So you're going to have a different conversation. You're going to have a different way of dealing with it than, my typical kid who puts his hands down his pants and I'm like, hey man, we don't do that. Private pants, private parts, go to the bathroom. That's offensive. Don't do that. And then they're like, sorry. Whereas, because they know that. Yeah. When you bring it to their attention, they're like, oh yeah, I'm not 4 anymore. I can't do that. But, a kid on the spectrum, if you said that to them, they're first of all confused why you're even irritated. And then they're confused why this is a problem anymore. Like if I started yelling at you for scratching an itch, like, why are you scratching your itch? Because it itches.
Well, it's the having that disability. And when we have children with disabilities, we accommodate them.
Right. That's the whole purpose of it. It's not so that we can label them. It's not so that we can even, the whole debate about masking. It's like, listen, we all got to function in society. We can't make society change for us. We all have to function in society at our best possible outcome. So, we want our kiddos, regardless of whether they're on the spectrum or they have ADHD or they have whatever they have, anxiety, whatever, we want them to be able to function in the world. So how do we do that without damaging them? And if you understand what they have, then you can help them navigate the world.
Right.
You can decide what they can decide what they want to accommodate themselves for and what they don't want to accommodate themselves for. But early intervention makes that all so much easier in the long run. And it also kind of eliminates some things.
Mm-hmm.
It can give them the best possible ability to function out there, So that's Jack's biggest downfall, was that being in COVID for 2 years meant we didn't get diagnosis till, and we only got half a diagnosis till 2nd grade. We didn't get a full diagnosis till 4th grade. We lost age 2 to age 10, which are like prime early intervention ages. For him, what we see the struggle that it affects him is social.
Yeah.
His ability to really understand how he comes off socially, how he, how to interact with people socially, his rigidity,
No, he's very black and white.
Yeah. So, but for other kids, depending on how autism is manifesting in them, how ADHD is manifesting in them, that's why we call it spectrums, right? Because it's different in everybody. It can be a laundry list of struggles. And so what you think is your sweet little guy who's in 2nd grade, who just gives everybody, hugs and never wants to go outside, and, at recess, and he wants to help clean desks and stuff, that seems really sweet, right? I mean, like, everybody's like, oh, what a cute little guy. He wants to, he doesn't want to go out and play with the kids. And when he does, he goes and he plays with the preschoolers because he's really sensitive. He's so cute. He's so great. And he hugs you, every time he comes in a room, hugs you every time he leaves a room. And it all is. It's all the best. It's so sweet. And also, he needs to understand personal space. And also, he needs to understand things that other people understand innately, which is, we got to ask people before we hug people, buddy. We can't just walk into their space and hug them. Your hugging is amazing. We love your hugs. But also, not everybody loves them. Some people are sensitive to touch. Like some people, like my daughter, don't just invade my space. So I've got Jack who wants to hug all the time. He wants to be all on you. And I've got Savannah who's like, get away from me. So, those two had to understand the opposite thing. So she has to learn that people don't always mean to invade your space, and they don't always know that you have a space issue. And he needs to learn you've got to give people a whole arm's length. You have to specifically define it for them, because they don't do just insinuated, understood social cues.
Right.
So, yeah, so he's got, he got AIM stuff, and that's been amazing for our understanding and for us to help him. And then they follow up, but also this sucks because it's all cash. It's not covered by insurance.
Right.
It's not state insurance, right? So still people don't have access to it. And here's the hidden secret. School districts can pay for your neuropsych eval.
But do they?
Well, not always. And, because they're expensive. They're thousands of dollars. And so they, it's hard to get the school district to pay. But actually, you shouldn't have to. Your insurance or your school district should pay.
And for those like you were when you were young and coming out, and maybe you didn't have insurance or the best insurance, that, they're not going to offer that. Then you struggle through. And
then they're fighting for it too, so their kid's not getting a diagnosis. We're waiting forever. Yeah, it's just. But
because
for the families out there who can't afford it, then, to me, Amen Clinic is gold standard. Absolutely, we've had a couple of our kids go through it now, and we offer it as a benefit to our employees. if they have that need for their kids, because we're just like, this is the gold standard. And I don't want people to not have access to it just because it's not covered by, insurance or whatever your situation is. And then I make sure, so now we're starting a foundation, right? Same thing. I want these things to be more accessible to not just, oh, I can afford it now. That's great. So then we're back to that inequality of lack of knowledge, lack of money. You don't get the same kind of service, medical service, that if you have money, you get.
Right.
And this is your children. You're running out of time. You don't have time to just, spend the next 10 years looking into this. And that was the panic I had as a parent, was I don't have time he doesn't have time. He's going to be 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. We're going to get into puberty. We're going to get into that scary age where he said he's going to be a juvenile delinquent, and it's like, I don't have time for your guys's.
Right. No, and we don't, as a society, we don't look at it like that, but because we don't get that time back.
No, you can't go back and do it.
Yeah.
And, that goes with early intervention. When they're young adults and they have never been identified, and now you're talking about it, or now they're really suffering some consequences. Smart kid not going to college. Smart kid isn't moving out at an adulting, right? When you're experiencing those real life consequences of not getting early diagnosis or getting a diagnosis, you have to understand what a disservice you have just done to your child. Just because you didn't want them to have a label. You can combat the label. You can combat the downsides of a label.
Well, I would even say that you never avoid the label. It just changes because
you're going to have a label, whatever you are, right? You're a black man.
Yeah.
You have a label.
Am I?
I know. I'm a white girl.
Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
there's labels, right?
You're going to get a label. You just get to control it because you labeling your child as the bad kid or the dumb kid or the problem kid, when in reality they have what we call an invisible disability.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're letting your kid down.
100%. Well, that's it.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. Please comment, like, and share. And if you want to reach out to us, connect with us on social.